Okay, here we go. This is the Leafs Convo for Oakridge Ford in London, Ontario. Oakridgeford.com. It is Sunday, October 1st, 2023. Norm in London, Mike in Buffalo. Those Maple Leafs, 3 straight wins in preseason action. The young guys putting on quite a show, Mike. We've got Minton, Gregor, Knies, Timmins, Callan. The list goes on. It's pretty encouraging, even though the season hasn't started, to see guys who are hungry and chomping at the bit to contribute to the master plan, and that is get the Leafs through a great regular season into the playoffs and potentially to a conference final. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Norm. I think the one thing that is encouraging, and we know that in the Kyle Dubis era, and like I said, I think Kyle Dubis did a lot of good things with this organization, but the results didn't end up happening for one reason or another. But the one thing is you can look at his drafting and you can look at it compared to, say, Mark Hunter. And I'm not trying to, throw shade at Mark Hunter, but, when you draft somebody in the first round and you draft somebody first overall or fourth overall, it's tough to screw that up. You can, like, maybe Montreal did with Slavkovsky, but it's tough. And they didn't screw up with Austin Matthews. They didn't screw up with Mitch Marner. They didn't screw up with, I think Liljegren was a good pick. But if you look at the drafts after the first round under Mark Hunter, Igor Korshkov in the second round in 2016 for the first pick the next day, because the first pick in the second round, you've got 24 hours to determine who you're going to take, and you'd fucking take Igor Korshkov. And when a guy like Carter Hart, when you were going to draft a goaltender, was available, and Carter Hart was World Junior goaltender, highest rated goalie in that thing. And they took Joseph Woll, and Joseph Woll is a good player. But my point is that he didn't really get good picks after the first round. And we saw that Dubis traded a lot of picks, but with his picks, second round, Matthew Knies, second round, Fraser Minton, second round, Nick Robertson. We don't know, about how good a Topi Niemela or a Mikko Kokkonen or some of the guys that they took lower in the draft. But, there are players that are still developing that he drafted in the 5th, 6th round that are playing in Russia, that are playing in U.S. colleges, that could be players down the road.
Right.
It's a bevy of potential. Now, maybe 4 years down the line, we'll say, okay, well, none of these guys turned out, but we know the guys with Mark Hunter didn't turn. Like, where's what was the kid for Kingston, the defenseman? It was a Finnish defenseman they took in the second round. He played like 5 games with the Toronto Marlies, and then now he's playing like second division in Denmark. It's like it's just embarrassing. So but specific to this preseason, and I'll start with Matthew Knies. He's lived up to all the billing. It's not like bloviation. It's not like, oh my God, this is not Lonnie Bohannes. This is not Jeff Farkas going back in the day where these guys. Oh my God, these guys are going to be 30 goal scorers, and then
you are name dropping this morning, Mike. Holy shit! How many espresso shots did you get in your vanilla sweet cream cold brew?
The synapses are going, baby. But these aren't. He's not these guys. This is a guy who almost won the Hobey Baker, who scored big points in college hockey, played for the U.S. in the Olympics and the World Junior, came in last year, played pretty well as a 20-year-old rookie in a Stanley Cup high-pressure playoff situation until he got hurt. And now, in these preseason games, he's penalty killing, he's scoring shorthanded goals, he's being physical, he's being defensively responsible. He made a play, I think it was on Friday night, where he got a pass in the defensive zone, and he used his body to shield the puck to prevent the Montreal player from stealing it. The only question about Matthew Knies right now is, can he be a top 6 guy right away? I'm not that. I don't know about that. We'll see, because I think they're going to play him with Tavares. But right now, he's lived up to the billing.
This is the Convo for Oakridge Ford in London, Ontario. Oakridgeford.com. September in the books pretty successfully. Lots of great incentives on all types of model lines, specifically F-150. The hope is for October We'll see more of the same support from Ford. We're doing our part. If you are looking for a truck, I'm your guy. Lease, finance, cash, whatever it is, at Norman Oakridge Ford is how you can get at me. We have edge left to Bronco Sports and Broncos. It's important that you reach out to me to talk a little bit about your vehicle owning or leasing future, because not only am I here to kind of potentially facilitate a sale, but if you need any kind of guidance, depending on where you are, you don't have to buy from me. Let me help you through the process. That's what I offer. That's a free service to all the OGs and converts. Mike, Matthew Knies is really exciting, and what he brings to the table. It could be a 3-zone 200-foot game with lots of physicality, with intent to again win puck battles, and then the skill can take over from there. Whether he starts in the top 6 or not means nothing to me. I still believe in a graduated process. Work your way up into a position where it matters. But looking at all these young guys fighting for spots, there are very few available. So there may have to be a point here where some guys get put in the minors. Other guys have to work their way up from the bottom to the top, and then we'll see players like Easton Cowan maybe in a year or two. It's a really, really good thing, and it's nice to know that the pipeline continues to be fluid. But at the end of the day, all of it's about supporting the main cast of characters that we're expecting to put together a very good season. It still remains to be seen where it all goes. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Connor Timmins, because it looked like he was going to be the 7th defenseman, and he was off to a pretty solid start. I mean, I've seen some write-ups. Oh, he's leading the preseason in scoring, big one. But from his perspective, to be able to see a guy rifling shots from the point and driving opportunities offensively from the blue line, that's what the Leafs had lacked. And he could have been a guy to contribute in that fashion. Then he gets injured, and the word is he's going to be out for a considerable period of time. That bloody sucks. Now we add another question to a defensive group that has some questions around it. And as I had mentioned to you before we went on, went live here, we may look back on this season and say it was successful or unsuccessful, whatever. But that defensive group was a bit of a carousel, a lot of moving parts and a revolving door of different cats coming in and out of the lineup. Do you think I'm onto something with that prognostication?
Well, I mean, everybody's looked at this team and seen their defense and saying that that's the area of concern. First of all, it doesn't match the want of the general manager, Brad Treliving. He likes bigger defense, and this is not a bigger defense. They're more of they're defensively responsible at times. But they don't have. There's not a lot of size. There's some skill. There's not a lot of bite to them. A guy like Jake McCabe might be the most physical defenseman of them all. The funny thing was that Timmins and Liljegren were the best defensemen on the night on Friday, other than Kokkonen, who's a rookie. Played like 24 minutes, and then late in the game he gets hit by Tanner Pearson, and it's a lower body injury, and nobody seems to know the extent. The fear is because he's had a knee. He was in a knee brace, and the fear is that because I believe he had an ACL injury before, that it's another ACL injury. And if it's another ACL injury, he's out for the year. And the issue here now is twofold. One, the depth on defense. Klingberg, it has an upper body injury. It's not supposed to be something of major consequence. Probably he'll be back for the beginning of the regular season. They're just going to be careful with it because they don't need him to get hurt. But that's 6 defensemen. It's Brody Riley, McCabe, Klingberg, Giordano, Liljegren. After that, it's like going off a cliff. It's like you're either going with somebody completely inexperienced. Now, I think Mikko Kokkonen has had a really good camp. But it's one thing to say he's ready to bounce back from a bad year in the AHL and do well in the AHL, to stepping in and being a defenseman at the NHL level. So I don't think he's ready for that. Topi Niemela has got the offensive chops. You've seen that with the Marlies. You've seen it in training camp. Defensively, he's not inept, but he needs to get stronger and he needs to get better positionally. That's something that comes with a year in the American Hockey League. And the veterans that they brought in, I mean, Simon Benoit has played one game. I didn't see him much in Anaheim. He's a big kid, and he played 70-plus games last year in the NHL. But if you're going to Simon Benoit in game 1 or 2, your defense is in trouble. Now, Raymond in the chat, Raymond Reddington from the Blacklist here. If Timmins goes to LTIR, the other problem is they're capped out on LTIR. They've got Murray and they've got Muzzin already on LTIR, and that's over $10 million. There's a cap on how much you can put on LTIR, and if Timmins goes on, that's another $1.1 million that they don't get much cap relief. Even with Timmins going on on LTIR, they're going to probably have to carry 20 players at the beginning of the season. So. Again, this is the dilemma when they did not alleviate the cap situation by making a Nylander trade. Now they're in this sort of moving. Brandon Pridham is going to be the most valuable player of this organization.
Mike, did they not? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Did the brass not expect this? And if they did, what's the solution here?
Well,
because.
They expected it because they didn't make the Nylander trade. They didn't trade anybody of significance off this roster, so they had to realize that this was an issue. But the problem is they didn't really solve the issue. They said, okay, we can get our way through the season and deal with this in season by the sleight of hand that Brandon Pridham does every time. Right. He's fantastic at it. But it's going to be a situation where they're going to be call ups and send downs and IR all year, and that's just going to. It's just going to be a problem. Now, the thing is, they're only going to carry 2 goaltenders. Martin Jones might be the starting goalie for the Tampa Bay Lightning by the beginning of the regular season because of the Vasilevsky injury. They have right now Jonas Johansson, who can't stop a beach ball, and a 22-year-old rookie named Hugo Allenfelt. So they don't have a goaltender right now, and Vasilevsky is going to be out probably for 2 to 3 months. So if that's the case, they're going to be scouring the waiver wire, and the Leafs, with their cap situation, cannot carry 3 goalies. The only way that they could keep all 3 is if one of them is injured, and that we hope that doesn't happen. So if they send Martin, and they can't send Joseph Wall down, Joseph Wall is the backup. So if they send Martin Jones down, I'm convinced that Tampa or Colorado or somebody else will claim him. Right. So they're going to have a 20-man roster, and it's a question of who are the 20 men.
Mike, I'm okay with Samsonov and Wall.
Yeah.
I 100%. OG's Conference, what do you think about that? Mr. Captain 93 paying tribute to the great Doug Gilmore. Does Knies make Willie expendable? Obviously, Knies play. Sure, in theory, Mike, but what you're alluding to is that, what transpires here either goes favorable or unfavorably for the Maple Leafs because they didn't do what they should have done during the offseason. But dialing back a few months, the Leafs are in a position or they're wanting to trade William Nylander for some help on defense. Who the hell would it have been? Who the hell would it have been? There's no point making a trade just for the sake of making a trade. You deal with the shit down the line. But who was there? Who was presentable? Who was available? Who was right at their doorstep, knocking on the door to be a Maple Leaf? And the Leafs just didn't have enough nerve to pull the trigger on a deal. Who would it have been? If
Carolina was shopping Brett Pesce, then that would have been a defenseman that the Leafs would have definitely been interested in. But the question with all the defensemen that were available during the summer is, that you probably can't sign Nylander. Can you sign them? If you're going to trade a valuable asset like Nylander, are you going to get an asset down the road?
Right.
Hannafin doesn't want to sign a deal unless it's a U.S.-based team. Pesce, I guess he wanted to sign in Carolina, but they wanted a lot more money than they wanted to pay. So would he sign with Toronto? Who knows? But the thing is, it's like you can trade a Nylander for a prospect and a first-round pick and then flip the first-round pick to get the defenseman that you need. It's not rocket science, but it's a question of whether the defenseman they wanted was out there. The thing is, again, I am not 100% sold on the fact that Nylander is going to be a center starting the regular season. They're experimenting with it. They're practicing with it. I get it. They have more wingers, and that's the whole thing. It's like if you keep Nylander on the wing, then your center depth is probably Matthews, Tavares, David Kampf is your third line center, and your fourth is Pontus Holmberg, who I like. I think he's an NHL. Right. With Nylander, Kampf moves down to the fourth line. And then when you shorten your bench late in the game, if you're down or you're up, you move Kampf up to a third line, and you move Nylander to the wing. That's what they're probably going to end up doing. But they have too many wingers. Darren Drager on one of the Leaf broadcasts was talking about the fact that to be cap compliant, they might have to trade a Sam Lafferty because they maybe cannot afford him. So, like, okay, all these things, Timmins, LTIR, trading Lafferty, it all stems from them not clearing cap space during the summer. And what would have cleared cap space? Trading William Nylander. How many times? Yeah.
OG's converts, do you feel like we're in a world of hurt, or is this all part of doing business in professional sports, and that things will work out the way they work out, hopefully beneficial for the Buds? I'll put up a poll in community, youtube.com/Leafs Convo here in the next few minutes.
Let me swing back on the prospects just to touch, because people in the chat were asking about other guys. So I'll just go off one by one quickly here. Easton Cowan, I'm really impressed. Again, I did not think it was. I mean, the people that I hang out with at the NHL draft are all draft people. There was one guy who had Easton Cowan going in the middle of the second round. Everybody pretty much projected him as a third round pick. The Leafs did not have a pick after 28th overall to the fifth round. They like the kid. They like his feistiness. He played really well for the Knights in the second half of the season, played great for them in the playoffs. He's going to go back to London, but he has shown that sort of, he's not a big kid, but he's feisty. He's fast. I know somebody compared him to like being that sort of annoying, Brendan Gallagher, Darcy Tucker type of player.
Good. If he turns out half of that. That's
yeah. So, I mean, but he's going to go back to London. He's going to hopefully have a good, healthy and a good season. And then, I don't think he'll make the Leafs next year out of training camp. I don't know what his birth date is, but I don't know if he'd be old enough to go to the Marlies. So it might be a situation where, he goes back to London for.
He's an 05 born, Mike.
He's an 05.
May 2005.
Yeah, so he won't be old enough. So he's 2 years in junior unless he makes the Leafs next year, and I don't think he will. But Fraser Minton is a really smart, really good player. He's going back to Kamloops. He is a young player with a lot of leadership qualities. He's defensively responsible. He's physical. He's going to probably play for Team Canada at the World Junior.
He's got some size to him too. He's not huge, but enough.
Yeah, he plays a really smart game. The coaches love him. They love where he puts himself. He's got a good eye. I mean, he set up Knies for one of the shorthanded goals. So they love what they see out of him. Nick Robertson, with him, it's the most important ability is availability. He's played well. He's had tough times converting as opposed to what he did last year when he led the team in scoring. He's going to go down to the Marlies, stay healthy for 25 games, score, and you do that, you'll get back to the NHL. If he gets hurt again, then on defense, like I said, Niemela defensively, I think still needs to hone his skills, but offensively, very quick, good on the point on the power play. Mikko Kokkonen, who has looked really good on defense. This is a guy who they took I believe it was the third round a couple years ago. Played really well over in Finland, came over last year, and in his first full year in North America really struggled. Now, I think, he looks like he's bouncing back. And Roni Hirvonen, their second round pick from a few years ago, has looked really good. He had a tough year last year. His father passed away and from cancer, I believe it was, and it really upset his season. And obviously, he looks like he's a player. I mean, this is somebody who needs to go to the Marlies, needs to play a full season, and if he succeeds, then he'll get an opportunity, because there'll be a lot of open roster spots in the next year or two with other contracts falling off.
Right.
Noah Gregor was a PTO. He's 25. I think he's 25 or 26 years old. They brought him in as a fourth line candidate. I think he's going to earn himself an NHL contract. He might make the team simply because he's going to be a guy making $775,000. And they need all the cheap players that they can get.
Mike V, do Benoit and Gregor crack the lineup?
Benoit, no. Benoit is probably going to get sent down. He'd have to clear waivers. I think they're going to start the season unless Klingberg is not ready on October 11th. I think Benoit is going to he's going to go through waivers and start with the Marlies. And then if they have an injury, they call him up, but I don't think he makes it. And I do think Gregor has earned a contract. Yes.
Gary K, I really think Gregor will earn a contract, but not sure if he will be with the Leafs to start the season.
Well, the problem there is then so he plays really well. He earns an NHL contract, and now you put him on waivers, and somebody else who's been watching him and saying, hey, he's playing really well, they claim him, and then you don't get him. So he either makes the team or, maybe they don't sign him to maybe they sign him to maybe he's open to signing an AHL deal. I don't know.
Yeah, Mike, thanks so much for the breakdown on all of those players. It's nice to know that there is support coming up through the system and that it's not completely dry. None of these guys are, soon to be Sidney Crosby's, but the Leafs don't necessarily need those kinds of cats. You need players who are very responsible, can play offensively, defensively, have some size possibly, and a little bit of grit. It's nice to see. I just don't like the idea of saying, well, Nick Robertson can only play in this situation. He can only play second line because he's a scoring player. I don't care. Like, start from the bottom and work your way up. I want somebody who is the full package. Size is nice, but the size of your heart and your smarts mean more to me. Rob, another great convo episode. Thanks, Norm and Mike. Theo 99. How these young players look in the playoffs is the only thing that matters. Robertson is likely to get injured when the going gets tough. I mean, that's a skeptical point of view, but that's one based on reality.
Right. I mean, it's based on empirical evidence. It's based on what has happened before. But you can't say. I mean, he's had a lot of bad luck. Really. I mean, a broken tibia, a dislocated shoulder. I mean, like I said before, when he got hurt. Nick Robertson needs a little bit of Mitch Marner in terms of his evasiveness and not taking on bigger players and absorbing their punishment. That's the whole thing.
Can they not sit together in the stands and talk about this?
That's not something that you can teach. That's innate. It's something.
But you can have who knows? They might sit on the bus together and discuss these things all the time. But with Nick Robertson, is he able to? Identify this as a problem for him, or is it just us suggesting this is why he's in the predicament that he's in?
I think he knows it. Norm, because honestly, it's like, it's really cost him. His reaction a couple weeks ago to, some questions of whether, the organization, doubts him or people doubt him. He basically said, I don't give a bleep what they think. And that's the right attitude to have. He's got to go out and prove everybody wrong.
Right.
The thing he's got to prove most of all is if he can stay healthy.
Right.
It's like all the other abilities are there. He's an offensively gifted player. Now, he's not particularly great defensive, and I don't think that they're going to put him in a fourth line role because it doesn't fit him. He's a guy who has to play in a top 9 scoring role with players who are talented. You can't put him with David Kampf and Ryan Reeves and expect him to
that limits opportunity for him, though, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah, but he's got that kind of ability. And the thing is, it's like if somebody gets injured,
but Matthew Knies has to be up in that situation too. Like, where the hell is a player who you throw on the ice and they can contribute in any which way, shape, or form based on what they're given?
Well,
knowing that the opportunity can open up as they get better and as they produce.
Well, the thing is, Noah Gregor is the perfect plug on the fourth line. He's fast. He's a penalty killer. He's somebody. But see, the thing is, you can't move Noah Gregor.
You're classifying these guys. This is you're
you have to categorize them. That's what these teams do. It's like, okay, Noah Gregor is a fourth liner. If Noah Gregor is playing on your first or second line, you're not a good team. And I'm not saying that to slag on Noah Gregor, but
no.
He's been an NHLer for a few years. I think he scored like 12 goals or 15 goals. He's He's been a decent pro, but he's not a difference maker. And you can't,
Right.
want him to put him in the same role that, say, Zach Aston Reese played last year with the Leafs. He played
Right.
third line, fourth line, mostly. Never got up in the top six unless it was late in the game and they wanted to be defensively responsible. That's his role. That if he makes this team, that's his role. Whereas Nick Robertson, you're not calling if you're calling up somebody to play on the fourth line, Nick Robertson's not getting called up. It's going to be, Alex Steves or Nick Abruzzese or somebody like
I get what you're saying, Mike. I just don't like the idea of kid gloving players, personnel who haven't proven anything. And it's their job to step on the ice and show the brass that they're capable and willing to do these kinds of things. But obviously, in the case of Robertson, he needs to stay healthy. He can look to Joseph Woll for inspiration. Joseph, let's be honest, Mike. If Joseph Woll didn't have the inner drive, maybe the belief system, the intestinal fortitude, the want to keep going, he could have retired. He could have packed it up, considering everything he had to go through from an injury perspective. And now here he is. He could potentially be the Leafs' true number one here in the next few months. And maybe he has a great NHL career. Nick Robertson needs to look at him for inspiration.
And the belief from the Leaf organization.
Right. Yeah.
Finally get through, because they signed him to a 3-year contract thinking
right.
that eventually he was going to make it through, and he finally stayed healthy and finally had a good year. No, I look at what where the Leafs are at right now, and I mean, I'm optimistic in terms of the sort of the depth of the organization in terms of prospects. The thing is that really those prospects are all a year or two away, so the hole pluggers like Gregor are necessary. Yeah. Now, let's see, Cowbell in the chat is like, on the note, who's the third line center? Is it a shutdown center? Well, okay. Right now, the third line center is William Nylander. And that's where I'm like, that's not a third line center. If you're playing,
would you not rather have John Tavares in that position?
No, because he's an offensive center too. I mean, if you're playing William Nylander up the middle along with Tavares and Matthews, and that's the plan, according to Sheldon Keefe, it's like not moving Tavares to the wing, it's playing all three of them at center, then you're going to have three offensive lines. Now, later in the game, like I said, you move Nylander to the wing, you bring up Camp, and you shorten your bench, and that's what you do. But
I like Nylander at center. He's a smart guy. Just it's a new opportunity for him in his career. He's done a lot as a finisher. He can be a great playmaker. Obviously physically he leaves a lot to be desired, and there's no real hoping, wishing, dreaming that something's going to change in him for 2023, 2024. But I do, in theory, the conceptually, I do like the idea of him at center. It's just how they all lay out, Mike.
Well, it depends on who they play him with, and I mean the
indicator. You look good with Domi.
Right. The indicators are right now that it's Max Domi and Järnkrok on the third line.
And those guys are, like, again, not, they're not Owen Nolan, Wendell Clark players, but they do have a bit of jam, right?
No, but Järnkrok is very defensively responsible. Max Domi, as you know from him playing in London and him playing in the NHL, he's not defensively responsible. He is physical. Not his dad, but he's still a physical player, and he's pretty offensively creative. So that might be a good mix. That means probably Knies with Tavares, and then I don't know. See, I think where the things are going to play out are is Bertuzzi a good fit with Matthews and Marner?
Right. Well, let's find out. Let's find out.
They're going to give him a chance. Hopefully, more of a chance than Nick Ritchie got on the second line with back in the day. I think they'll give it a little while. But then if it doesn't work, then they move Bertuzzi down with Tavares. But the second line right now, conceivably, is Knies with Tavares and Lafferty. So
what's crazy? What's crazy, Mike, is how we know what these players bring, what their positive attributes are, and what traits we wish they were better at exuding. And we just know this. Like, okay, William Nylander's he's an unbelievable offensive player who lacks on defense, and he's 10 years into the league. How come we are not saying, here's a guy who defensively was inept, to start his career, but has made some major changes. And now, he's more of a balanced hockey player. Max Domi, the Leafs pick him up. They want something a little different out of him than they were getting out of other, or they had lacked. I mean, what's that? Just being Max Domi? Well, he's great offensively. He's solid offensively, but he's not great defensively. Why are these guys still lacking at this point in their careers? Why are they not working on these things to become better players, to be more responsibly, in all three zones, 200 feet hockey, as Dale Hunter used to say?
I think they have worked on it, but even after working on it and being in the league for 6-7 years, they're just, there are certain aspects that you can't make Max Domi bigger. You can't make him stronger than he is right now. He can get muscled off the puck. He's a very creative player, and sometimes it's creative for the other side. So it's like, I mean, you're taking away some of the positives. Now, last year he played the majority of the season at center with the Blackhawks. When he went to the Stars, he played on the wing, and he played great for them down the stretch and in the playoffs. They want him to play on the wing. So that's the thing. I think the motivation to play Nylander up the middle is because they have too many wingers. And again, am I sold on William Nylander playing center? No, because every time they've used him at center in the past, he's been a defensive liability. Now the thing is, I'll concede Sheldon Keefe's point. Like, okay, well, he didn't start off the entire training camp, and he didn't work at center all the time, and maybe that's the reason why. Okay, they're playing him at center all the time. Okay, if in the first few weeks of the regular season he's playing up the middle and he makes a couple big defensive gaffes, then I've said this and I continue to believe it. The reason that they're playing him at center is they want to find out whether he can take over for John Tavares in a year or two and be the team's second line center. And if he proves that he can't, they will not sign him.
It's not that bad. The Leafs are in pretty good position. And contractually, there's some things many things to iron out to make things work financially. The defensive carousel, that's going to be a story. Whether Nylander stays at center or moves back to the wing because he's coughing up pucks, we shall find out. But comparative to eras past, Mike, the Leafs have a lot of good things going for them. Sure. I got to get to a baseball practice here. My men's league teams in the championship: Wolves, Rays again. My son's playing for Great Lakes Canadians this morning, and then throughout the rest of the fall. And then the Toronto Blue Jays are backing into the playoffs by losing to the Tampa Rays. What a fun way to go. And if they lose today in game 162, do you still celebrate? Anyway, Mike, don't comment, because I know you would love to disparage our Blue Jays. I know you would. But I'm going to let you do that while your Bills are losing to the Dolphins, while your Bills are losing to the Dolphins. So you can be pissed off about multiple things and then question the, Nylander at center later by yourself. But real quick, just to get through some of the comments in the chat, because it is pretty lively, and I do appreciate all the OGs, converts, and just, people who are dipping their toe in the waters of the Leafs Convo for being here. And contributing. Like the content, guys. Subscribe to the channel. So we're just going to go through a few, and then we're going to get out of here. Where are we? Rob, quick question. What type of role and line did Steve Eiserman play with Detroit in his first 2 years? He played on a checking line, and some of the young players on the Leafs need to play checking roles. Quick on that, Mike.
Honestly, I think that's wrong. I mean, Guy Lafleur played in a checking role early in his career, but the Montreal Canadiens were loaded. Darryl Sittler played on the wing when he started with the Leafs in the early 70s. Then he moved to center, and he became the player that Steve Eiserman was a scorer right away.
Right.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Do you not want to create a culture of just rough and tumble kind of hockey, regardless of if you want to play here, you're going to have to adapt?
Yeah, when Steve Eiserman became a defensively responsible player, after the rumors of him being traded to Ottawa happened, and after they lost him for a year.
I'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah, okay. He was a checker. He scored 87 and 89 players in his first 2 years. Where was he a checker? No. He wasn't.
Day and age, Mike, you had to do a little bit more back in those days just to survive.
He could play both ways later in his career. This is a guy who scored 100 points 6 years in a row. But when they won, those are the years that they lost in the playoffs. When did they win their cups? When he scored 85
He
points.
wasn't you couldn't be an ice dancer in those days though, Mike.
Right.
You were hooked, you were slashed, you were gashed, people were punching you in the head. You may not have had that in your system, but you would have projected that just to make it through a game without getting, mugged. Waldmore, Walchuk, Matthew Knies, and Minton Cowan are having a hell of a preseason camp, not to mention others as well. 100%. Railmans, you are the only Leafs news source for me. Keep up the great work, guys. Mike, isn't that super nice to hear? Brian Walker, so far, Leafs preseason has been 65% rookie, so no chemistry is being developed for the actual regular season players.
Well, they're
interesting take.
Yeah, they're all.
Does that even matter?
Well, they're all practicing together, so it's like Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner don't need game experience when, guys who are guys who are going to play in Laval are taking runs at them. Now, like when the rosters get pared down the last 2 games of the preseason, you're going to see a more representative NHL lineup, and they'll play.
Right. Theo99 back in the chat because he's got great questions for us. What young defenseman would you trade Nylander for in a 1-for-1 deal? Exclude superstars like Kale, Makar, etc.
Well, the problem is that the young defensemen are not available because they're cheap. I mean, like I said, I look at the deal that Minnesota made with Los Angeles. They traded Kevin Fiala, who was a restricted free agent. They got a first-round pick in Brock Faber. Brock Faber was playing at the University of Minnesota. He was a second-round pick. Now he's going to be a top 4 defenseman. A deal like that, that's what you have pro scouting for. You find out a young defenseman who's developing in an organization, and you say, that guy plus a first-round pick. If you want a guy who scored 40 goals, that's what we want. And if you don't get that, then maybe you wait to the deadline. And I think – once the season starts, if they don't get him signed, they're probably not trading him. And I think it's a mistake, but they're probably not going to. And then the opportunity was lost.
OG's Converts, thanks so much for being here. Again, if you're just testing out the whole culture that is the Leafs Convo, just to see if it's a place for you, welcome. And we'd like to have you back. So Mike and I do Sunday shows, the Sunday Spectacular, sometimes not so much, but it is content. And we've been doing this regularly for the past 5+ years on YouTube. And before that, we were on SoundCloud. And then, 980, 20 years ago, almost, Mike. Going forward, Mr. Augello and I are going to pop in some weekday shows. So we did one last Monday. I can't say that we'll do one every Monday in the weeks and months to come, but we may pop in a Tuesday show, Wednesday show, depending on how the Leafs schedule shakes out. And of course, Mike's got a lot of stuff going on in his life, as do I. But the commitment from us is at least one show per week, most likely 2. And then if shit hits the fan, there's a big trade or something's going down, you might hear from us 2, 3, 4 times in a week. Because we love doing the convo. We just feel like, like the Maple Leaf, kind of knocking at the door of some real greatness. I do believe this project is following suit. Theo99, one more from you. Nice pod, guys. Go Blue Jays. Go. So there's another
31 straight years of over 500.
Oh my God, Mike, are you a baseball fan or a Yankees fan?
Both.
You are more tribal about the Yankees than you are about the Leafs.
No.
What?
No.
I tell Melissa this all the time. Mike loves his Maple Leafs, but he loves his Yankees 10 times more.
No. The baseball season is about the same length as the hockey season. I mean, I'm a reporter now, so I can't be pom-pom waving blue and white. I have to be professional. I'm more like the Yankees. I don't cover the Yankees, so I can be an unabashed fan.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with being an unabashed fan, Mike. The thing is, there's something freeing about watching baseball that you're not emotionally attached to. So when the Jays get bounced in 2 by whomever, Tampa or Minnesota, I'm so bad, but it's
Tyler Glasnow. There you go.
Geez. Then I can watch baseball free of that, that emotional attachment that we all really want to have, when things are going well, but when things are going poorly, it really, really hurts. So again, just like what's going to transpire with the Maple Leaf season over the foreseeable future, we just have to kind of wait and see how it all unfolds and unpacks. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. Mike, the Leafs have the Canadians one more time, and then it's a couple games with the Red Wings, and then it's on to the regular season. I'll leave it with you. Wrap it up. What are you expecting this week to come? What do you want to see so that the team can do as best as it possibly can to situate itself, regardless of all the noise, for success in 2023, 2024?
Well, I think the first thing is to find out the extent of the Timmins injury, because that's going to be key. And then, really at this point, just the cut down of the roster. A lot of these kids are going to go back to junior or go to the AHL. So it'll be interesting to see the roster decisions that are made. So that's what we'll track.
David W., with the current episode about to end, I'd like to thank the co-hosts of this episode. Hockey, no doubt, is back with the NBA's preseason soon to follow. Go Leafs, go, and go Raptors, go. I like how David omitted the Blue Jays.
Yeah, because it'll be on pretty soon. That's why.
I think he's on Team Augello. Okay, guys, we've got stuff to do. Thanks again for being here. We'll probably catch you sometime during the week. So like the content, subscribe to the channel so you get notifications as to what we're going to do next. For Mike, I'm Norm. Have a great Sunday, guys.